Hello, everybody. Welcome back to Streets and Eats. And this episode of our podcast is a year in review.
It's the end of December. It's time to be sort of looking back and seeing everything that's happened with us, which is quite a bit, actually.
Yeah, we've managed to talk about a lot of it in our podcasts, but no way could we do everything.
Here's the thing. When you come to being a content creator of any type, well, at least in our experience, I'm assuming other people have the exact same experience, is that with travel, we travel. I mean, it is our passion. We travel a lot. So we never been able to, probably never will be able to keep up with whatever content we're putting out there, whether it's a blog or a podcast or, I'm not very good at the daily thing anyway. So maybe if I was better at that, but overall, we just can't get it all out there. We just do too much, which I love.
We don't travel to podcasts.
We don't.
We travel to travel, and then we like to share that with our listeners.
Yes, that's exactly.
And so we can't share everything because
we're
too
travelers
much.
First, podcasters
second, maybe
third, fourth,
somewhere on that list,
somewhere down the line. So it's the year in review, and here I'm thinking. As we were planning out our podcast, Jim and I were talking, and we're like, a year in review, do we really need to do one this year?
Do we do that much this year?
We didn't really do that much. I mean, it felt like a slow year.
Yeah.
But then we started looking at actually what we did do, and I got to tell you, it wasn't as slow as we thought.
Nope. Pretty much every month, every week, something was going on. We were going somewhere or doing something.
I mean, we're so happy to be back in Central Europe. We told you last year. And you know this anyway now from watching listening to our podcast and stuff, that we are now German residents. And so living in Central Europe again, it's just my favorite thing because you can go so many places. We have been repeatedly in the Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg, France, Austria, Switzerland, France again, France, and then France.
Netherlands, Belgium, back to Luxembourg.
Yeah. And, we've done a lot, I guess, more on the Western end of it.
Well, we're in such a good location that we can be to some of these places in less than 2 or 3 hours.
Well, and we go shopping in France for
just across the border.
Grocery shopping because I love French products. I love German products too, but I really love French products.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah, it's just across the border. So why not? It's about a 40-minute drive.
Yeah. So anyway, we're going to tell you all the things we did. And I thought we would start out by, reminding ourselves, and so we can let you in on this, how we travel. Why do we travel and how we travel?
Well, we're both, somehow we found each other in this world, and we're both explorers. We love to explore. We love to just get out, find new food, have new experiences, learn about a new culture, learn the history of a place. All of these things they all factor in why we're traveling. I don't know that I could put any one over the other, although food's pretty high on the list.
Yeah. I think a lot of people travel to relax. I do not think that we travel to relax. Like, we're not going to a resort. You'll never hear... I should never say the word
you can't say never.
But you probably will not hear us talk about going to a resort and sitting and doing beachy things.
Spending a week on the beach.
It's just not our modus operandi. We would much rather be renting a car and heading out to the villages and getting out of the major cities. I think that's a big thing for us. I mean, of course, we've been to Paris, we've been to Rome, we've been to London, we've been, and some of the places we go repeatedly. But I wouldn't say it's our first love. It's not our travel first love to go to big cities. It's our first love to go find something smaller where we have this more of an intimate relationship with the place, and we can talk to the people, and maybe they're used to tourists, but they're still not overwhelmed by tourists. They're not jaded by having tourists all the time. Because sometimes when you're in some of the largest cities, they just, you can still have a good time, and we do. I don't think we've ever had a bad time, but well, you know what I mean. But for the most part, I mean, you can still get a feeling like, oh, these people are busy. They don't have time to talk. Blah 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 blah. Like we were in Reims earlier this year on our way up to Normandy, and the waiter was. I mean, the restaurant was packed.
Yes.
It was Olympics. The Olympics was going on, and it was packed. Actually, were we going to the Olympics? Maybe that's where we were going. Anyway, it doesn't matter.
Yep.
The point was, they didn't have time to sit and chat with us. But when we're out in this little village in
the Alsace,
they'll come over.
They'll talk to you about the food. They want to know where you're from.
They might bring up politics. They might bring up what the things you've done in the area are. They might tell you their favorite wine. There's so many different things that, and it doesn't have to be a huge, long, lengthy conversation, but just more than just, what can I do for you? I don't know.
What do you want?
I guess it's a difference.
I agree.
And as far as history and museums, we like that stuff.
It's important, but it's not the only reason we travel. And you can't do too many museums in one.
I think we scratch the surface there. Like we get a good understanding of it. I like the fun stories. I like the weirder stories or sometimes the gory stories, depending on where you are and what's going on.
And what the history was.
Yeah, that kind of history. Like when we were in Verdun, it was a really fun city that I would have never really thought of going to. And they have good World War II. They have a huge, wonderful World War II museum and some forts that are connected to it, sort
World
of.
War II or World War One?
Is it World War One?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry, World War One. Much for that history. But anyway, it's really well done. And like one whole room of a fort was dedicated to the war animals, the war pigeons and the war dogs.
That's right.
The war donkeys. I mean, to me, I remember that because it's not the same old in 19 blah 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 blah. Something happened at the battle of blah 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 blah. Because I'm not going to remember that stuff. I'm not even remember which war it is necessarily. Anyway.
Yeah, right.
Anyway, and then we like to do things. We want to have experiences. I think the things that I remember the most fondly are places where I was either doing something on my own or I was doing something with somebody like in a class or
right.
I don't even really as much think of demonstrations or tours, but just like really hands-on
cooking lessons and things like that.
Doing things, yeah. So that's what we do. That's what we look for.
Yeah, and I think we do a pretty good job of it.
I think we do. And the good thing is Jim and I have been traveling together for so long that we do sort of have a rhythm. And our rhythm has changed.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's faster, sometimes it's slower, but at least we're pretty much in sync with each other. If it, I mean, at the point we're at right now, our perfect travel day looks something like this. We get up, we get in the car because we don't usually pay for hotel breakfast.
Yeah.
For a couple of reasons. One, it's going to be a buffet. And a lot of times they want like 20 euro a piece.
Yeah.
We can go out and the two of us can have a breakfast for 20 euro.
Yeah. It really depends on the cost of the hotel breakfast and what kind of reviews it has. If the breakfast is included and there's no way to pay for it for the hotel without getting rid of the breakfast, then we'll have it. And usually we'll enjoy it. I mean, a typical European breakfast is pretty standard. Cheese, some cold cut meats, tomatoes, cucumbers, some baked goods, usually small croissants or mini choco croissants, pain au chocolat, that sort of thing. And maybe some fruit and some yogurt. But we kind of have a cutoff. Like if you have to pay more than 14 euros for a breakfast, you're going to get a pretty good breakfast somewhere outside of the hotel. That's exactly what you want for about the same price and maybe even less. So there's really no reason to do a hotel breakfast. So it really
depends, but I would say more often than not, we're eating outside the hotel.
For sure.
So we'll go out to breakfast or coffee or something. Then we'll go, and we usually only plan on doing like 2 or 3 things
activities
per day. Like we'll go to a museum, we'll go to a church, we'll go to
castle or
something like that.
Yeah.
but very loosely sort of planned. And we usually will just have a list of things that we want to accomplish, someday.
While we're there.
Someday, because we almost never accomplish it all we're there. And we basically do a lot of walking around and a lot of sampling of different foods. We'll stop for a coffee. We'll stop for lunch.
Stop at a cafe for a baked good or something.
Because that's important to us. We're always looking for the local foods and where we can find them. And that's always part of the experience as far as I'm concerned. So we take it pretty slow, but in the long run, because we're pretty, good at just going and doing what we want to do, and we don't linger and we don't spend too much time doing it. We don't get to the point where it's like, oh my God, I can't look at another Venus de Milo ever again.
Yeah, you're right.
We just don't get there. So
you don't want to get you don't want to get to that point. You just don't. Okay, so I guess we can just work our way through the year and talk about the things we did and what happened when. I think last year when we did our end of year review, we were in the end stage of applying for our temporary residence cards and just got them. I think we got them like December 4th, but we couldn't pick them up until after January 1st because they had to mail them to Kaiserslautern. And then we had to wait for the place to open during the Christmas break. They had like a 2-week Christmas break. We couldn't get our cards. We were pretty worried because our Schengen visa time had expired. And our 4 months in Germany time was close to expiring. But we really, nick of time, we got everything and it was never a problem.
Yeah, we were fine. So we had done our end of year podcast and we didn't mention the last trip of the year. So we just thought we would start with that. And that was a Christmas market trip. Our daughter, Devin, came with her husband, Marcus. And then, of course, Erica and Michael live here already. Mm-hmm. So all of us went on a 4-country Christmas tour. 4-country Christmas
Germany,
tour.
Netherlands, Belgium, Luxembourg.
And France.
5 countries.
So 5. Anyway, and so we basically just went and spent a night here, went to the Christmas market, spent a night here, went to the Christmas market, and we went to the Netherlands, and we went to the Valkenburg, and we went to Maastricht, which was really cool. And then we went into Belgium, where we went to Leuven and Brussels. And then we went to Luxembourg and spent the night there, Luxembourg City. And then we were in Metz in France. Anywhere else in France while they were here? We also went to Vianden Castle during that time. Vianden
Castle in Luxembourg.
I love Vianden Castle. It really, for us, it's one of our nostalgic. We just love this place because we used to live not far from there. We would take people there all the time.
It's a pretty regular place to go to.
But it's changed a lot since that was happening.
Yeah, they've done a lot of renovations and restorations. So that's really cool.
And then, of course, we did a bunch of stuff in Germany, like have Marcus. We went to Trier. We missed the Christmas market there because it was closed by the time we got there, but we did get to have spaghetti ice, which was number 1 on his list because
usually when people come to visit, spaghetti ice is an important thing.
You got to have
winter,
it.
spring, summer, or fall.
Winter. Okay, I'm not going to sing.
Don't sing, please. We also kind of rediscovered volksmarching when we lived in Germany in the 80s and 90s. Volksmarching was, that was
popular.
Very popular, and we were big into it. You were even the president of the club for a little while there in Rhein-Main. And so we were pretty much every weekend Volksmarching. And then we moved out of Germany. We moved to Alaska, and there's hiking and there's trails everywhere. And everywhere we've lived in the Northwest and like all over the place, there's lots of good walking and good hiking. But we never really thought of that as Volksmarching or connected it with the idea that the IVV has Volksmarches all around the world. So it just kind of dropped off our radar.
Till we got moved back here. So now we're back into it big time. We've done Volksmarches in 5 or 6 countries now. 7 countries?
7, 8.
8
Don't we
countries?
only need 2 more to finish our
8 countries. We've done it in 8 countries. So we're hoping to we're doing a little challenge and we need to do 10. So we're hoping to do Switzerland and Denmark next, I think.
Yeah.
And then we'll finish that challenge up, even though there's plenty of other countries to do them in.
So we've rediscovered Volksmarching, and I think we've got over 100 kilometers of Volksmarching now.
Over 200.
Over 200 kilometers of Volksmarching now this year. And this has not been a great year for me for walking. So That's pretty impressive, I think.
It is pretty impressive. So basically, the reason we mention that is because what that does for us is it takes us to smaller places we wouldn't normally go, or other countries, and then we incorporate a walk that's completely just walking, along with going to see whatever we're there to see and do.
Right. It's a good way to do it. I really enjoy
that's what we like to do. Anyway, so I mean, of course, some of the big places that we have gone to, I would say multiple times this year, are, like I said, on the western part. We've done the Netherlands at least three times.
Yeah, 3 trips.
The first time we went, we had to go during the flower festival, and we did do a good podcast on that and the whole all the things that go along with a weeks long celebration of flowers. Most people think of it as the tulip festival, but quite frankly, it's longer than that, and it takes
it's all kinds of flowers
and everything else.
We did the behind the scenes where they're before the parade, where you can go in and walk around the floats that they're building. We got there kind of late in the building process, so most of them were done, which was kind of cool, because then you could see the floats up close. You could walk around and take pictures of everything, but we didn't really get to see the construction part. So
as much as
if I was going to do it again, I would make sure I got there earlier for that. And then we went again later in the year to go see the cheese market in Alkmaar.
And that's something that's been on my bucket list for a very, very long time. You see these pictures of these guys dressed in white sort of uniforms or whatever, and they've got the cheese sleighs, and they
stack
pile
the
them up,
cheese
and they run back and forth, and that's what it is.
They're rolling cheese from the stack to put them on the sled, and it's just really cool.
And we went to Alkmaar, and while we were there, we happened to sit by where I talked to everybody, and so we sat by this man who I kept talking to, and finally found out that the reason he was there was that his son had just recently joined the Cheese Masters, and so he was in the show. He was in the weighing of
sled
the cheese
carriers.
And so we end up having such a good time. They invited the cheese master to come meet us.
That's right.
And we just got really lucky because, we were chatting up whoever was there. One of the things they do that I never knew before was they actually bore holes into some of the cheese
to
do a quality test. So Jim got to bore the hole in. And
they take the whole wheel out to different parts around the square where people are watching, and they let the onlookers take the core sample for themselves, and then you get to eat it, and it's delicious.
It's so good. For
me, the tastes were quality number 1.
Like we know.
I don't know
but it was delicious. And I don't know. So we just end up having a really, really good time.
Took the ferry that same day, that same trip. We took the ferry out to Texel Island, rented bikes, and rode around the island on bikes.
Texel Island is
pretty cool.
A UNESCO World Heritage Site. It's up in the Wadden Sea. And there's a bunch of islands that are up there. There's German islands, Dutch islands, I don't know, Danish islands. There's all kinds of islands. And it's all part of UNESCO World Heritage Site, and it's something we've been wanting to do for a while. So what we did is you can easily take a ferry. So you park at the ferry building on the Dutch side. You take the ferry. It was about 20 minutes, half an hour ride.
Half hour.
And then we got to Texel, where we were able to rent bikes right there. We had hoped for e-bikes, but we didn't get them because we didn't make reservations. So if you're going to go, make reservations.
That's our big tip. Reserve your bikes.
And then I think we ended up doing almost 30 kilometers, 28 kilometers or something, where we were pedaling, and we had a typical fish lunch with kibbeling. Is that what it's called?
Kibbeling.
Anyway,
fried fish bits.
Fried fish was really good. And we had farm ice cream, and we saw all the little houses, and we were on a national park. And it was just a day full of riding bikes and just really enjoying being outdoors and seeing what Texel had to offer.
Exploring the island. Very cool. Third trip.
And then the last trip was just about a weeks ago, where we went up there in the fall. Well, late fall. And we went, and the reason we went is so that we could stay in this fort. So another UNESCO World Heritage Site is the Defenses of Amsterdam. back before World War One and through World War One, but not so much afterwards. They have all these canals, as you know, and they had these special water connected canals that were only knee deep
Mm-hmm.
and
3 feet deep.
3 feet deep. So they were too deep for people to run across or drive across, but they were not deep enough. I don't know. It was very confusing the way they read it, but it was very interesting. And we didn't actually get to go to the museum, so we have to go back and do that. But we stayed in one of the forts.
Yeah.
The fort is turned into a hotel.
Beautiful brick fort. It's like a circular fort with the rooms around the outside. And there were barracks rooms, there were storage rooms, there were powder rooms, all that stuff. But now they've been converted into hotel rooms, of course. But it's just like an incredibly beautiful place with all the brickwork. I mean, the Dutch are masters at brickwork. They really are. Arched entryways, just really beautiful. A cool place to go stay. And then you get out and you walk around the area and you can see the defensive works and all that stuff. Really a cool place just to spend a night and maybe a day or two walking around the area and exploring.
There's not really much around there unless you want to drive, and we didn't. So we ate dinner right on site, which is kind of nice to do sometimes.
It is. It was a good meal. It wasn't
my favorite dinner.
You did not pick very well, but the food there was pretty good.
Yeah, I didn't pick very well.
That happens sometimes.
It wasn't my favorite dinner, and I don't know that I would recommend it, but everyone else seemed to like it better than me. So I don't know. Take
and
that
then
as
from there,
want.
we went on to Utrecht, which is, we've been to a lot of places in Holland, in the Netherlands, but we never really spent any time in Utrecht. And it's got a beautiful old town, lots of good shopping and good food. Just a great place to just get out and see some of the architecture and walk along the canals. There's canals everywhere, of course, in the Netherlands.
And the gabled houses and just the quaintness of it. And it was close. It's getting close to Christmas, so we started doing some Christmas snack shopping.
That's right. Got some peppernoten, different flavors.
And candied initials.
Yeah, and I had my first glühwein of the season.
Yeah, that's right. The first glühwein of the season. So it was, like I said, we just did that, and that was a lot of fun.
And I think it goes without saying that on each of these trips to the Netherlands, we had Dutch pancakes.
Oh, yeah, because that's
we
our
are
favorite
not going to
thing.
go to the Netherlands and not go to the pannenkoekenbakker.
We have two mainstays when it comes to Dutch food. And they don't sound Dutch, but they are. I mean, the pancakes are truly Dutch.
Yes.
But, and we usually get a savory pancake and then also a sweet pancake, a fruit pancake. But the other thing is a lumpia. Okay. Lumpia is, of course, Filipino, but the Dutch do it their own way, like many people do. And one of the things they do is they make these massive, huge.
They're quite big.
Lumpia, where they stuff it with noodles and pork and cabbage and
lots of vegetables
and
bean sprouts.
And they're just really, really large. And of course, they deep fry them, so they're really great for you. And
but
then you
tasty.
put on top of it, you put on sambal from Indonesia. And it's a really interesting thing that I've never been able to see these lumpia anywhere else. I mean, I've had lumpia all over the world, and of course, they're good everywhere. But these are just Dutch lumpia.
Very
they're
unique.
Good.
Yeah, it's like a little meal on a plate and one big egg roll.
Yeah.
Pretty good.
So we spent quite a bit of time in the Netherlands, like we said, on multiple trips. Another place we did that with was France. We love France.
Yeah.
It's one of our favorite places on earth.
We're right on the border here. Alsace is not far. Like you said, we go shopping at the Carrefour in Forbach, about 35 minutes away. I'm not even sure how many times we went into Alsace this year. Maybe 2 or 3 again with that one as well.
At least twice. We were in Alsace 2 different times. One in the early spring on our way down to the Black Forest to do some Fasching.
That's right.
And we stopped off and spent a day in Colmar. And while we were there, we did the canal tour and we went to the Bertoldi, which is the guy who built the Statue of Liberty. And we always eat all this wonderful cheese, and the downtown area
Lots
is
of good
just
food.
gorgeous.
Hmm.
And so we did that for a day. And that was early on. And
Yeah.
then just a month later, we went down and we did the whole route de Vin.
Yes, from the top
Marlenheim
to the bottom
to Tann.
And just drove through all the little villages, stopping for wine tasting here and there. We actually had kind of a slow start because we made it to the first village and ended up in a wine tasting there, which we weren't planning on doing for a lot longer than we expected, but just having such a good time talking with the vintner and the family members were there that owned the place and have owned it for generations.
400 years.
It's just an incredible experience. And you don't want to, okay, well, we got to get down to the next village on the route.
Which we did. But you know what?
We can only drink one or two and then we're gone. No, you have to savor the experiences.
Yeah. So that's where you have that balance of spontaneity versus getting your agenda completed.
Yeah.
So we did not hit as many towns as we wanted to on that very first day because we spent so much time in Marlenheim, which is the very first
town
on the route de Vin. But it'll always stick out in our memory as something wonderful. So I think it's important to take those experiences. Oh, the other thing we did on the first trip is we went to see the apes. We went to
the ape mountain.
Oh, and we did the center parks with all the activities.
Oh, that was a different trip, right?
Oh my goodness,
we went
we've been
to center
France
parks
so many times.
We talk about how we don't really do these relax vacations, right? Where you go off to a resort and you just hang out there. Well, we did do one kind of like that.
One night.
For one night. Center Parks is a resort chain throughout France and I think other parts of Europe too. But here it was, we had our own little bungalow and you're kind of in this area that has hiking, of course, horseback riding, places for the kids to play, all kinds of different playgrounds.
And
all
the main
kinds of
reason you go is
activities
because
that
they
you
have
can
this
do.
wonderful water park pool.
Yeah.
And so in the middle of winter, it's indoors and it's beachy. They even have sand. And I mean, it is resort. It's a resort. But we're going to spend a week there. Many people spend lots of days there. We spent one and we had a great time. But
it's one of those places where you would typically go for a week, but we just did for a weekend and that was enough for us.
Yeah.
And we had a good time.
Definitely. So that was another time. But anyway, so we did the whole route to Van where we went to some of our old favorites because we always go to a few of the places that we tend to go to those areas over and over and over again. But this time we made an effort to do villages all the way from Marlenheim down to Tann. And we discovered some really beautiful places that we
had never been
to before and would now probably recommend people to go because they're a little lesser known. They're still got that real French charm that's sort of untouristed at this point, and just really beautiful stuff. But we did a whole podcast on that, so you can check it out.
That's right. Don't miss it.
After that, we did our Normandy.
That's right. We did a whole trip to Normandy, the World War II beaches, all the memorials. My favorite thing, the Caramels de Signy. Just, yeah. And by the way, all of these are pretty much road trips.
Oh, yeah.
We only flew one place this year.
Yeah,
but we'll get to that. In Normandy, we spent a good 3 or 4 days there, and it wasn't enough. It really wasn't. It just isn't.
I mean, I don't think we're people that go overboard on the museums, but we did hit at least one a day. And I mean, these museums are amazing. There's so many good information in them. The histories are good. What I personally liked about doing the beaches was that the towns in that area really highlight what happened in their town, and they tell the stories about what happened there. So, for example, we stopped at this one little tiny village, and the only reason we were driving through it, but as we're coming to the center of town, the church door is open, and through this little tiny wooden door, I can see the stained glass window shining through because the sun was coming on it, and I made
colored light beams towards the car.
Just stunningly beautiful. So I had Jim pull over so I could take a picture, and then we go to the church, we check it out, and then right at the church there's a story about this paratrooper and this soldier, and then right across the street was another sign telling about a soldier that had held off 10 from the enemy right here behind this well, right here. And then there was a little farmer's market that had like 5 booths at it.
Yeah.
It was just, it was so personal and it was so local. It was just very sort of pinpointing that area, didn't talk about everything else.
Right.
It was just wonderful. And it was probably the very first thing that we did.
It's true.
And it sort of set the tone for really enjoying those personal stories. So we sort of.
But that was a great trip. We had also got a chance to see the tapestry on that trip, the bow.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, the Cannes Memorial Museum is probably the premier World War II museum in the world. And we easily spent 2 hours there. Could have spent 3 or 4 hours there. You talk about,
and we're not big museum people.
Yeah, we talk about museum experiences and how we'll go through at different speeds, and I might read some of this and you might read some of that. But here it was like everything was presented in such an interesting narrative that you just felt like you had to read it all.
Yeah. And then we went to a place up in Clairbourg that is called,
I need more.
the Cité de la Mer.
Oh, yes.
And the Cité de la Mer is another museum, and it had 4 main exhibits. It had a Titanic exhibit, it had a aquarium, it had submarines.
Well, the fourth thing was the submersibles and the submarines exhibit as you first walked in. And there was an actual nuclear submarine that you could go through.
Which we did.
But then there was also the display area with like Jacques Cousteau's submersible that he explored the Indian Ocean in. And yeah, a whole group of submarines that you could kind of check out.
It was a fantastic museum. It was great for kids. We had a blast. And then we wanted one last, it was our last day up in Normandy, and we wanted a really nice lunch. And we really wanted to find some mussels and just sort of have a seafood lunch and be all together. And Jim's looking at, Google,
trying to find all these places. This one's open for another half hour. This one closed already. This one you need reservations for. And then we're like, well, there's a restaurant right here in the museum area. Let's look at its reviews.
It was a 4.7.
It's a 4.7, thousands of reviews, excellent food. Everyone's like lauding it up and down. So we're thinking, let's just go here.
And it
we
was
did.
amazing.
And it was amazing.
It was really good. We were
beautiful
just
restaurant with views out over the water and into the museum, and great food, friendly wait staff. I mean, you couldn't ask for more.
It was fun. I'm trying to think if there's anything else. But we did so much. Erica and Michael took AJ to fossil hunting on a beach.
Mm-hmm.
Of course, there's lots of beaches that you can just walk on and stuff, which you do a little bit of no matter what.
Yeah.
And as well as all the World War II things. I loved the Pont de Hoc. I loved Arromanche. I just loved going to all the different places. And, we watched Saving Private Ryan.
Yeah.
And we watched.
We stayed in an Airbnb, so we were like, we had time in the evenings. We'd cook our meals or go out to dinner. Yeah, it was a good trip.
It was really, really a good trip. We loved it.
We also were in France for the Olympics. We went to a water polo event. That was so much fun. Neither one of us are big sports fans, or certainly not water polo fans.
Well, any kind of sports. I mean, we don't even really dabble in it. Like we hike and we bike ride, but we don't play tennis.
I like to swim, but I'm not competitive about it at all.
And we don't watch anything on TV really. If it's on, that's one thing, but we don't really.
But it's always been a bucket list item, I think, for both of us to go to the Olympics, and it can be quite expensive, especially when it's held in Paris, by the way. And so we found some tickets. Actually, someone had some tickets that they were offering up for sale, and they're a water polo, and it was a good deal, but we responded too late, so we didn't get those tickets. So then we thought, well, why don't we just check
look at the site
and see how much water polo costs to go? And it wasn't too bad. So we went ahead and booked it, and we got tickets, and it was a fun time. It was a once in a lifetime experience for sure. Just dealing with the crowds and dealing with with everything in Paris during the Olympics. But the actual event was a lot of fun.
was
We had
so much
so much fun. It was Australia was one of the teams playing, and we sat in a group in an area where there was a bunch of Australians around, so they were really getting into it. And yeah, just the energy was a lot of fun.
It was really fun. And on that same trip, because we stayed in Giverny and we trained in, and we thought this is a good way to go see Monet's garden.
And
I would say that was one of the highlights of the year.
For sure.
It was the end of June, right? The end of June. Yeah, the end of June.
Everything is in full bloom.
Full bloom. There were a lot of people there, but we had booked first entry tickets. And as it turns out, I think it says you can enter at 9:30, but we entered at like 9:15. And then we went straight to the pond, where we figured would be the hardest thing to get pictures of. And we were right. There was lots of people there. And then we went to the house. But the gardens are amazing. The house is amazing. Monet's artwork is amazing. Everything about that trip, I was pleasantly surprised. I kind of, I was excited to go, but at the same time, sometimes when you go to places like that, they're so hyped up. They're all over Instagram, and you're like, is it really going to live up to it? And it did.
It did.
And it really did. And another thing we had sort of bookmarked was there was supposed to be this great sandwicherie in town.
Right.
And the French, as you can imagine, with baguettes and fresh bread, have amazing sandwiches. And this place was
ham.
Spectacular.
Yeah, it was really good.
And so we just sat out in the garden and we had a good sandwich afterwards. We went to the Impressionist Museum, which I would not recommend people doing that unless you just have the time and the want to do it. But nothing like the Impressionists in Paris with the D'Orsay and things like that. But still pretty interesting.
So we ended up spending actually quite a bit of time in France as well this year. Amazing.
Is that all of France that we did? I'm sure there's more. We spent so much time in France.
Day trips in and out, and for sure. But those were the big ones.
Those were the big ones. Okay, so France, the Netherlands, those were the other place we spent the most time, I think, is Austria.
Yeah, we did spend a lot of time in Austria. We went back and forth to Austria a few times this year.
Yeah, on our last podcast, because in the past, Austria has never really been at the top of my list. We loved Graz, we loved Linz. I'm not a big fan of Vienna.
No, me neither.
But it's got some really cool things to do there. We've done the Glockner Highway, which is a beautiful drive, and
we've been to Innsbruck and so a few places in the mountains.
We've gone skiing there. We did Christmas there one year, where we went to the chapel where they wrote Silent Night. So we've done a lot of Austria, and yet Salzburg, and yet it never really, if I was telling you my favorite countries, I don't know that I would have mentioned Austria. But this year it grew on me a little bit more. We went on two separate occasions to two different areas. The first was in the Weidring area, and there we went to a castle. We went to the Kufstein Castle. We went to the Erlebnissennerei, which is a dairy, and I will go back there in a heartbeat. It has the best hot chocolate in the world.
In the world.
I would challenge any hot chocolate in the world to this one. It was that good. What else did we do on that trip?
You bought your slippers, your felt slippers.
Yes. In fact, I still wear these. Yeah, they're right here. I went to the town where these are handmade.
Hartel.
And you can go.
The name of the place is Hartel.
And you can go to, it's in Stum, Austria. And you can go in, and the ladies are literally putting these together in one little tiny room. And then there's a showroom that's about the size of our little podcast area here. And it is tiny. And they've been there for generations and making these handmade felted slippers.
Making piles of slippers.
Amazing.
Really cool. We also went up on the Salva Alm.
Oh,
and we saw this Trachten Moda fashion show.
So basically, you take the cable car up, and on the way up, they gave you a shot.
Yeah.
I didn't take a shot.
Schnapps.
Of schnapps. And then you get up there, and they had a walkway set up right outside the ski hut.
Catwalk, yeah.
A catwalk. And they were playing all kinds of folk music and kind of upbeat yodeling music. And everybody's in their dirndls and their
Lederhosen
and they're dancing and they're twirling and there's one that's a wedding couple and they're getting married with their flower girls. And I mean,
so much fun.
There was only probably 60 people there.
Yeah, watching the whole thing.
And they were all locals. They all knew everybody. They're yelling out to Hans and Gretel and whoever else. And here we are, these two.
Well, we had seen little signs. We had seen little signs posted in different towns around the area while we were driving around. And so we thought, well, that looks like something fun to do. And it turns out that it was kind of on a route that would take us out and back towards our home. So we thought, well, we'll do that on our way home.
Yep.
And we did. And we're so glad we did.
We're so glad we did.
Because it was a pretty unique experience.
It was. Like I said, there was no other tourists. I mean, there were no other tourists, not let alone Americans. There were no other tourists from Germany,
it was all
from
very
anywhere.
local. It was pretty cool.
All very local. It was very fun.
On that same trip, we also stumbled across the Krampus Museum, which was a small, well, I say small little museum, but it was jam packed full of Krampus masks and devil masks and all this really incredible artwork. And it was in the sub basement of the soccer stadium bleachers area.
Weird
bleachers.
Stuff.
Really
Very
strange.
Fun.
And that was pretty cool. I enjoyed that.
So we had a great time on that Austrian trip. Good food, like wonderful people. Everything was wonderful. And then we just went back there in August, or was it September? September, because
we wanted to see the cows coming home.
Yes. And that we got snowed out. There was a huge, if you don't live in Europe and try to go to the Alps in mid-September, there was a huge snowstorm that shut everything down for almost a week. But did we have we still had a lot of fun. We still went. We still enjoyed everything that we did.
Well, we had the reservations for the hotel and we thought it's still going to be beautiful. If we can get there in our car, we will go ahead and keep going. And we could, and we did. And we had a great time.
Yeah, we went to Hohenwerfen Castle. We stayed in Filzmoos and we did all kinds of things in the Alps around there. We did all kinds of walks. We took the cable car up. It was part of our free thing that you get for the tourist tax on the card. You could take the cable car up. Right. And they had a little cafe up there called the Shorgialm. And up there we had a couple of it snowed. There's snow everywhere. We even had a tiny snowman on our table. And then we had a couple of shots and it was just so much. And really the sun was shining because at this point the snowstorm is over.
The storm was gone.
It
was back to September weather, but there was tons of snow everywhere. We also did Hallstatt and we went into the salt mine, which we had not done before in Hallstatt.
We've done salt mines a couple of different places in Austria. And but nothing like Hallstatt.
Yeah, no.
Hallstatt was huge.
Pretty incredible.
It was expensive.
Just the whole story with the fact that it's been a salt mine for a couple thousand years. And it's still an active salt mine. So there's archaeological remains all around the area. It's just a fascinating place.
Well, and then not just all around the area. The very last part. So there's different stations where they have different museum exhibits. Mm-hmm. Some parts are salts from all over the world. They have a video here about water extraction versus mining versus this. Then they have the whole history of how far back it goes. And one of the very last place that you go, you have a little video. And then it tells you about how the Neanderthals were mining the salt and they lift the curtain. This is amazing. And behind it is this 3,000-year-old staircase. Still there. I mean, you can see it. Yes, it's behind glass, so you can't touch it. That's okay.
Yeah. But it was preserved
amazing
because of all the salt in the air. And yeah, it's really incredible. So yeah, that was a really good trip. All of our time in Austria has been amazing.
It has. And then we went down and we had hot chocolates and Apfelkuchen. And
that's right.
The cafe, you can understand this, is pretty packed. Well, it's a very European tradition to sit at people's tables. They just ask you if it's free.
If you have extra seats.
If you can sit there. And some people do that. So anyway, this French guy asked us if he could sit with us. And we're like, absolutely. We had the best. That was part of the experience. We had the best time talking to him about his trip. He was doing a little car trip through the Alps and he had been a truck driver and now he's a farmer. And it was it's just nice to meet people like that.
Yeah,
and
hear
sit
their
and talk
stories.
for a couple of hours. Well, I don't think it was a couple of
No.
hours. It was probably more like 40 minutes or something. But it was fun. It was really fun.
And the cafe overlooks the town, so you got the lake below and the little town of Hallstatt below you. Pretty cool place.
And I'm sure we did more than that, but we spent some time in Austria this year, and then we really, really enjoyed it.
We also had earlier in the year, in spring, we did a week-long trip to Crete.
Yes, that was the only place. That's what Jim mentioned earlier. We only flew one time this year. Flew once, which I can't tell you the last time we only flew once in a year.
Well, maybe 2020, 2021.
Oh, yeah. He's
when
right.
nobody was going anywhere.
When nobody went anywhere.
Yeah. So we flew into Crete, rented a car because you really want to drive around. Some people will go to Crete and they'll go to a resort for a week.
And you can do that.
And you'll have a good time staying in the resort. The food, I'm sure, is okay. You'll be on a beach. But we wanted to get out and see the island. And so, of course, that means renting a car and getting out and seeing the island, driving around the roads. And it was a really great time. The food was delicious. We went to Knossos. We went to the monasteries. You did horseback riding. We went to a couple beaches. And we did a really excellent cooking lesson with a woman in her own kitchen where we made a lamb stew with green pepper or green beans. And we made a couple of fried dough dishes. It was so good.
One of my favorite dishes that she taught us how to make was very simple cold salad, which was cold chickpeas with feta cheese and oranges. That's it.
Yeah.
Delicious.
Really good. We were there during the Greek Independence Day.
We were there.
And we stumbled on a couple of like Independence Day celebrations and parades. And so, of course, we were like, okay, we're stopping the car. We were on our way to one of the archaeological sites, and Google Maps takes you through this town. We're driving, we're following the route, and we get to a road closure because of a parade. So we're like, okay, instead of trying to get around this, why don't we just park the car and go check out the parade? And that's what we did. And it's just a little local town, local parade, maybe a couple of the tourists, but mostly it was all the families from the surrounding area who had
children,
a child in the parade or were walking in the parade themselves, that sort of thing.
It was a lot of fun. And then we went to quite a few museums. I think 2 stood out for us. We went to maybe 4, but 2 of them were really good. The Archaeological Museum in Heraklion was amazing.
Yeah.
It had all the stuff from Knossos and stuff, and that was really cool. And we kind of expected that. That was one of the first stops on our list because we were like, we're not missing this. But one that we didn't plan on, which I think all of us were just wowed at, was the history of Greek inventions.
Yeah, it was a technology museum, but the technology was all ancient Greek. And so there's, a water wheel and these like wine servers that I couldn't even begin to explain how they work, where they put wine in one area, and if you dropped a coin in here, it would fill a glass and the wine would come out of like this beautiful woman's mouth or something like that. Really impressive.
They had the first robots. They had the catapults. They had, I can't even tell you everything. We took tons of photos. We spent, gosh, I don't know, an hour and a half, 2 hours there. And it was not a big place. But everything was so well put together. And I guess it was in English. It must have been in English.
They had English for the displays. And they offered, everything worked. All the displays worked. So they said, if you're interested in something, please don't do it yourself, but we can come over and show you how it works. And they would do it. And yeah, that was just kind of a walk by place. We walked by and saw it one day and thought, if we have time, we should do that sometime. And we did. And
we had, of course, this is Greece, and Greece has phenomenal food. And Cretan delicacies are even more.
They were delicious.
They were I don't think we had a bad meal the whole time we were there. We ate, and then we ate some more. One of my favorite things that we did was this little hole in the wall Bugazza place.
Oh yeah.
And we basically had to walk there from our hotel, and we walked down this hill, and we walk in, and we're like, is this, because I'd read about it and I thought, is this really a place that has like this breakfast? It serves one thing. It serves Bugazza. So you get Bugazza, which is basically a phyllo dough with some kind of filling.
Walnuts.
And some cream on it if you want it.
Cream.
And nuts, yeah. It was so good. So good. So delicious. We really, really enjoyed it. Everything about the trip, it was spring. So here in Germany, it was still sort of,
pretty cold.
Spring German weather where it's cold and it's rainy and a little windy still. Hasn't really turned green yet. It was just beginning. The pre-green was out maybe.
And there it was sunny and nice. And so nice. I mean, it wasn't swimming weather. You weren't going to go swim in the Med.
We did actually go in the water though at the one beach.
We got it. Yeah, we did get wet. We didn't go swimming. We didn't go all the way in the water.
But we don't swim really anyway.
Yeah. Really good trip and much needed at that time of year for sure.
Yeah. So anyway, we had been wanting to go to Crete for years and we finally made it.
Yeah.
So that was kind of a bucket list.
Our other big trip was to England. And okay, so last year, I think we've talked about this before. We bought the English Heritage Pass, and it was good until August of this year. And so we had been trying to figure out how we could do a trip to England and spend some time in there. Well, Erica and Michael and AJ had all thought of this idea of going to London and taking AJ to Digger World. And
well, not just that, but the main reason we were going is to go see the West End show Spirited Away.
That's right. We had tickets to Spirited Away.
Yeah.
So
our whole trip revolved around these tickets. We had these tickets for, I think she got them in like January.
Right. Super, super cheap, super early.
Yeah. For 30 euros a person.
Just had to make the commitment to plan a trip to England in August. So we did.
Twist our arms,
And we've got our California caddy. So we decided we would take the ferry across, camp when we could, stay in small roadside inns and B&Bs.
Just do a big road trip,
and then meet them in London for those for those couple of days. So we ended up spending a good 2 weeks in England,
and we are going to do an
and we'll do a podcast on that. So we won't spoil too much.
More information about it there. But basically, let me just run it down for you. We went to castles. We went to stately homes. We went to Charles Darwin's house, which was a highlight for me. We ate. Surprise, surprise. We had so much good food. It was pathetic. What else did we do? We did in London. We spent about 4 days in London and we did a lot there. We did some stuff that we've never done before. London's one of those places that no matter how many times you go, there's 58,000 more things to do.
Yeah. You're always going to find something new to do.
We
did a Volksmarch in
we did
England
a Volksmarch
with one of the local groups there. Yeah. We just jam-packed it, and we will do a podcast on that road trip for sure.
But just know that we went over there through Hoek van Holland, and so we ended up taking the same ferry there and back. There, it was a daytime ferry, but on the way back, it was a nighttime ferry, and we did that very purposefully, and we ended up spending the 6 hours sleeping. So, and I thought that was perfect. So we got on, and we got our key. They give you your key as you're checking in, so you don't even have to go rest or figure out where you can go to cabins or anything like that. You go straight to your room. We went straight to bed, and then they wake you up about an hour before you dock. So that was nice. That was really nice. And you can get on. I don't think the sailing was technically until 9:30 or 10 or something.
Yeah.
But I think we were on by 7:45.
Yeah.
So we knew we were going to have to get up early. So we basically went right to sleep.
Yeah.
It was perfect.
It worked out really good.
Yeah,
really
it was a great trip. We just had a lot of fun. I think the funniest thing, and like I said, we'll do a podcast, but we did a little bit of ancestry hunting while we were there.
That's right.
And the personality of the people that we ran into, that was interesting in and of itself.
It was
was fun.
Fun part of the trip. I agree.
I think we're going to be doing more of that. Spoiler alert.
Other than that, I mean, those were the big trips. And like you said at the beginning, it seemed like we didn't do a whole lot this year when we look back on it. But then once we started thinking about it, we're like, well, yeah, we did this, we did that, we did that. Well,
we didn't say that we did the 2 weeks of the Dolomites because we just did that
podcast.
So you guys know all
2 weeks in northern Italy.
If you missed it, it was last week's podcast, so check it out.
But it's actually very surprising that we've been able to do as much as we've been able to do, because this has also been kind of a hard year for us. For me, especially health-wise, because I was diagnosed with cancer in March. And in fact, it was the week before our trip to Crete. And we asked the doctor, well, should we not go to Crete? He's like, well, Nothing's going to happen right away. A lot will happen, but nothing's going to happen right away. And if you feel up to it, go to Crete. Live your life is basically what he was saying. And that's kind
Good
of
advice.
how we took that advice to heart. And in every time we talked to a doctor or anybody about it, they pretty much said the same thing. This is not the end of your life. Get out there, do things, enjoy what you have, and do as much as you can. And so that's kind of how we've approached this year. Kind of grab it by the tails and do what you can.
In all fairness, we did cancel a lot of stuff.
We had to. A lot of stuff went by the wayside. Like you said, those longer distance trips where, chemo would come up and nope, we're not going to be able to fly to Spain, that sort of thing.
Yeah. We canceled a trip to Spain. We canceled a trip to the United States.
Mm-hmm.
I'm
Maybe
sure
one or two more.
We canceled a lot of stuff. I can't.
But it really forced us to stay local and look to places that we could drive to. And I think it ended up being a pretty good year.
We did a lot of one night overnights or just day trips. And we just went through a whole list of things that weren't day trips. They were like week-long trips or 2 weeks, but we did a lot of local stuff. And you always kind of overlook that.
Yeah.
And you should have, because we've had so
much fun. Those are important things too. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. We've had a very good year, and we've done so much that, looking back and thinking of what things were like in February and March, would not have ever thought we would have done much this year. But, radiation therapy kicked in. Things were working pretty good. The chemotherapy helped quite a bit. I had a surgery in August, and we were able to get out and just really enjoy Europe and do things that we probably wouldn't have done otherwise.
Yeah.
So I think it's been a pretty good year.
I think it's been a great year.
And I'm looking forward to a better year next year.
Me too. Me too. So stay tuned to our website, Reflections Around. We have all the little day trips we've done, whether it be the little castles we've been to. There's castles on the Rhine. On our upcoming podcast are things like our top 5 things we did with kids this year, our top 5 foods that we've eaten, our top 5 most beautiful places that we've seen. So there's a lot coming up, and of course you can go back and see some, listen to some of those that you've missed, because we really have done quite a bit, and it's been a great year.
Yeah.
2024 turned out much better than we expected.
Definitely.
Ciao for now.
Ciao for now. All right. Thanks for listening to this episode of Streets and Eats. If you liked what you heard, please show us some love, hit the like button, and leave us a review. Maybe even subscribe so you don't miss any future podcasts. Also, we'd love it if you joined us on our Facebook private group, Streets and Eats, where we just have an ongoing conversation about all things travel. Ciao for now.